I thought I was hearing things, genuinely, when the scream tore through the quiet morning. I mean, the lake was supposed to be mine. I had bought it legally, through a tax auction, hired contractors, and was driving in the very first post for my fence, feeling that deep satisfaction of turning a plan into reality. But then, this woman came charging toward me, a white badge swinging from her neck, shouting right in my face, "Stop right now. You're destroying community property." The whole scene was instantly absurd, unreal. She had papers, violation papers, a small group of women behind her nodding along like a Greek chorus, and even a security team blocking my supply truck. I just stood there, the hammer still heavy in my hand, thinking, how is this happening? How did fencing my own lake become a crime? She stopped about 3 feet away, close enough that I could smell her expensive perfume mixed with the sharp scent of the freshly printed paper she thrust toward my chest. Her name was Lorraine Whitfield, according to the badge, but the text was slightly blurred, clearly run off a home inkjet printer, not professionally laminated. She declared, with practiced intensity, that I was violating Meadowlark Estates HOA regulations, Section 12.7, unauthorized construction on common property. Behind her, 3 women in matching visors stood with arms crossed, while a man in a reflective vest marked HOA security blocked the dirt road. He had no radio, no weapon, no identification beyond that vest. He looked exactly like someone's out-of-work brother-in-law earning weekend cash. The whole thing had this strange, theatrical quality, like a play that had been rehearsed many times but was still missing the necessary professional polish. I'm Wyatt Callahan, 42, a retired civil engineer who spent 20 years reading blueprints, analyzing property documents, and understanding zoning laws before selling my construction tech startup. So when Lorraine mentioned criminal trespassing charges, my jaw tightened, not from fear, but from the sheer audacity of the lie. You cannot trespass on property you legally own. That simply isn't how the law works. I asked her one simple question that cut through the noise. What's the exact parcel number of this lake in your HOA records? She hesitated, just for a second, but I caught it. Her eyes flicked to the woman with the clipboard, then back to me. That information will be provided in the formal violation notice within 72 hours, she said, her voice slightly less steady than before. A legitimate HOA board president would know that parcel number by heart. The fact that she dodged told me something was deeply wrong. She continued her threats. Fines of $750 per day, legal liens on my property, lawsuits that would drain my savings. The women behind her nodded in unison. Lorraine then pulled out her phone and deliberately photographed my face, my license plate, and my confused contractors, announcing loudly, "The community will be notified about this attempted land grab. We protect what belongs to all of us." She marched back to her white SUV, entourage following in formation, leaving me standing in the sun, holding a violation notice that felt increasingly flimsy. I looked down at the paper. No letterhead, no official seal, no document number, and no counter-signature from a board secretary, which basic HOA governance requires for official enforcement documents. The font was Times New Roman on plain copy paper. I've seen hundreds of legitimate notices in my career. This looked like a middle school drama prop. That evening, I sat at my kitchen table, my legal deeds spread out beside my laptop. I had purchased Pinewood Lake 4 weeks earlier at a county tax auction for $52,000. My plan was simple: restore the choked, abandoned ecosystem, build a small cabin, and escape the city noise. The deed was unambiguous. Parcel number 3142-007, Pinewood Lake, unincorporated area. I pulled up the county assessor's website. The record confirmed it. Unincorporated county land, completely separate from the Meadowlark Estates subdivision. Then I pulled up the HOA's official CC&Rs document, their master rule book, archived on the county recorder's database. Section 1.22 listed every parcel under HOA jurisdiction, numbers 3145-001 through 3145 to 189. My parcel, 3142-007, was nowhere on that list. Not even close. I leaned back in my chair. Lorraine Whitfield had claimed my lake was HOA common property. The county records proved it wasn't. She had threatened me with massive fines and criminal charges over land her organization had absolutely no legal authority to control. I thought about the blurry badge, the fake document, and her hesitation when I asked for the parcel number. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a calculated attempt to intimidate me, banking on the assumption that I wouldn't check the paperwork. A darker question began forming in my mind. If Lorraine Whitfield has no authority over my property, then why is she so desperate to control it? The next morning, I was the first person through the door at the county recorder's office. The clerk at the counter looked up and paused. "You're the fifth person in 2 years asking about HOA boundaries in that area," she said, sensing the pattern was unusual. I filed that comment away, feeling a chill. Holding the certified plat map and CCNRs, documents with the county seal embossed right on them, felt different. I confirmed my property sat a full quarter-mile outside the HOA's territory. But what really caught my attention was a note in the margin of the CCNRs from the most recent amendment in 2017. All official enforcement communications must include a document tracking number and dual signatures from both the board president and board secretary. Lorraine's document had none of that. This wasn't sloppy. This was deliberately fraudulent. That evening, I received an email notification. The sender address looked official, Meadowlark HOA official, but the instructions directed me to submit my $750 fine through a mobile payment app to an account listed as Meadowlark HOA. I almost missed it. They cited the correct parcel, the correct regulation, but real homeowners associations process payments through official banking channels with documented paper trails, not through mobile apps that anyone can set up in 30 seconds. They had done their homework to look convincing, but they slipped on the financial detail. I forwarded everything to Rachel Vance, my real estate attorney from college. Her response was instant. "Wyatt, this is textbook fraud. The sophistication of the setup actually makes it worse, not better. Whoever created this knows enough about HOA procedures to mimic them convincingly, which means they've done this before. Save everything. Do not respond. Do not pay. And look at the link I'm sending you." The link led to a 2020 article from the local paper, the Meadowlark Tribune. The headline made my chest tighten. Residents complain about unusual behavior from HOA representative. The article described multiple complaints about aggressive enforcement and questionable fines levied by someone claiming to represent the board. The legitimate board president at the time had publicly disavowed the actions, specifically naming the individual responsible as holding only an advisory committee role with absolutely no enforcement authority. The photograph accompanying the story, Lorraine Whitfield, advisory committee member. Somewhere between 2020 and now, Lorraine had simply promoted herself to HOA board president, and apparently, no one had stopped her. This wasn't a personal dispute. This was a systematic operation stretching back at least 4 years, collecting fines through unofficial channels, and abusing a title she hadn't earned. How many people, I wondered, had simply paid the fine and moved on, never realizing they were being scammed? 3 days later, I was back at Pinewood Lake with certified copies of my deed, the plat map, and something extra, a small action camera recording continuously on my chest. I knew she would come back. The white SUV appeared as my contractors began unloading equipment. Lorraine emerged with increased authority, flanked by women in embroidered polo shirts. She announced into a walkie-talkie. "Security team, confirm position." More theatrical escalation. Then she dropped the new bombshell. The HOA board had convened an emergency session and voted 5-1 to freeze all construction pending a formal boundary review. My mind flashed to the article. She was only an advisory member. She cannot convene board meetings. She cannot vote. She was lying. She held up a document without handing it to me. "Cease work immediately, or I will contact law enforcement to report criminal trespassing on HOA property." Her voice was sharp, but I noticed a slight tremor when she met my eyes. I kept my voice calm. I asked her a simple question. "Could you confirm your official title within the HOA organization?" "I'm the board president," she snapped, defensively. I pulled out my phone and dialed the number listed on the official Meadowlark Estates website. I asked the administrative assistant who answered if any emergency meetings had been held recently. No. I asked who the board president was. The assistant confirmed everything Rachel and I had suspected. Lorraine Whitfield was only an advisory committee member, a non-voting role with no enforcement authority. I ended the call, turned back to Lorraine, and laid it out. Your own organization just told me the meeting never happened. They told me you're not the president. And they told me the man blocking my truck has nothing to do with them. I suggest you leave before I call actual law enforcement to discuss impersonation and harassment. Her composure cracked completely. She stepped backward, visibly shaken. You don't understand what you're dealing with, she stammered, the practiced intensity gone. She left, shouting that I would regret this. Her security guard abandoned his folding chair and cooler and walked quickly away. We resumed work, but I was deep in thought. Why was she so persistent? That evening, I met Malcolm Trent, a retired county clerk who had witnessed Lorraine's departure. You're not the first person she's targeted, Malcolm said, his voice low and roughened by age. I've watched her run the same pressure campaign on at least 4 families over 6 years. Every single one ended up selling their homes. And every single one sold to the same buyer. He pulled out a folded piece of paper with 4 names: Denise Hartman, Carl Weber, Joyce Fowler, Neil Patterson. Call them, he urged. Ask what happened. Once you see that pattern, you will understand this was never about HOA rules. This is about something much bigger. I called Denise Hartman first. Her voice was cautious, but when I explained who I was, there was a long silence. Then she said, I've been waiting 3 years for someone to ask me that question. Denise's story revealed the insidious pattern. Lorraine had manufactured violations, an impermissible garden shed, and then launched a calculated psychological warfare campaign, organizing neighbors against her, leading to her complete isolation. She panicked and sold her home at a loss, never realizing Lorraine had no authority to place a lien. Carl Weber faced bureaucratic exhaustion, drowned in endless paperwork requests until he simply surrendered and sold. Joyce Fowler was publicly humiliated over her elderly cats until her husband collapsed from stress. Neil Patterson lost his job after Lorraine sent anonymous letters to his employer. For families, 6 years, each broken by a different method, but all funneled toward the same exit. Rachel's research confirmed the buyer was Cedarbrook Premier Holdings, a shell company owned and managed by Lorraine A. Whitfield. She was acquiring distressed properties at prices averaging $70,000 below market value. But the final piece of the puzzle came from Rachel's deep search, a preliminary acquisition memo from a major developer, Sunridge Partners. The memo outlined a $3.2 million purchase of the consolidated HOA parcels, with my Pinewood Lake listed as the centerpiece property, providing scenic amenities essential to premium pricing. Lorraine was the local acquisition coordinator, with a projected commission of $288,000 upon closing. I had accidentally purchased the linchpin of a 6-year scheme. That night, my phone buzzed with a text from the number used for the fraudulent HOA emails. Mr. Callahan, you're playing with fire. Sell the lake back. $70,000. Consider it a win. If you don't, your life in Meadowlark will become very uncomfortable. Something cold and sharp crystallized in my chest. Not fear, but focused anger. I thought about Denise's exhausted eyes and Carl drowning in paperwork. They weren't weak, they were ambushed. I texted Rachel back 4 words. They're scared. We proceed. This was no longer my fight alone. Denise, Carl, Joyce, and Neil were willing to testify publicly. Warren Hull, the investigative journalist, was on board, having tracked 52 anonymous complaints against her. We had the numbers, the documentation, and the collective courage to stop running. We learned Lorraine was planning a special resident assembly for Saturday, a last-ditch attempt to manufacture a public mandate to sue me, tying me up in litigation until her $3.2 million sale closed. We had 6 days to expose 6 years of fraud. We gathered at my kitchen table, Rachel, Warren, Malcolm, and the 4 victims. Our plan was simple. Attend as ordinary residents, let Lorraine present her lies, and then systematically dismantle her entire scheme in front of the community she had manipulated for years. On Friday night, less than 12 hours before the assembly, Lorraine's lawyer offered $120,000 for my lake and a permanent non-disclosure agreement. I sat in the darkness, the double profit tempting me. But every time I considered it, I saw Denise's face, the shame she carried. They had all made the rational choice to walk away. I couldn't be another link in Lorraine's chain of silence. The community center was packed on Saturday afternoon. I found a seat near the middle. Rachel, Malcolm, and the victims were scattered throughout the crowd. Lorraine, in a navy blazer, was working the room like a politician. She had no idea what was coming. She opened the meeting with grave concern, describing me as an outside speculator who had acquired community property through questionable maneuvers. She proposed a resolution for the community to declare Pinewood Lake an essential asset and authorized the board to pursue all legal remedies. When she asked for questions, I raised my hand. I walked to the front and connected my laptop to the projector. My first slide showed the certified plat map, with my parcel clearly outside the HOA boundary line. This resolution asks you to vote on claiming property the HOA has no legal authority over, I said calmly. A community vote cannot create ownership. It cannot transfer title. Mrs. Whitfield knows she cannot win. The room grew silent. My second slide displayed the 2017 minutes, highlighting the line. Ms. Whitfield's position is advisory only. She holds no enforcement authority. She promoted herself to president without election, in direct violation of recorded governance. My third slide showed the Cedarbrook Premier Holdings filing. This company has purchased 6 homes from residents. The managing member is Lorraine Whitfield. Then, Denise Hartman stood up in the 4th row. I'm Denise Hartman. I lived here for 11 years until Mrs. Whitfield manufactured violations over a compliant garden shed. I sold for $78,000 below market. Her company bought my home. Carl, Joyce, and Neil followed, each speaking for less than 30 seconds, stating 1 violation, 1 loss, 1 buyer. Just the facts. I watched expressions shift from skepticism to disbelief to pure, righteous anger. Warren Hull stepped forward, holding a document. I'm Warren Hull, investigative reporter for the Meadowlark Tribune. I've obtained an email sent by Lorraine Whitfield to Sunridge Partners, a development company pursuing a $3.2 million project in this area. He read the key passage aloud. I will handle the current owner using the same methods that have proven effective with previous acquisitions. My commission upon successful closing, $288,000. The room erupted. Lorraine grabbed the microphone, her composure finally breaking. You don't understand what I've done for this community, she shrieked. 6 years of work to bring investment here. And this is how you repay me. The confession, caught by Warren's camera and witnessed by everyone, hung in the air. The doors at the back opened. Sheriff Carl Winters entered with 2 deputies. Rachel had submitted our evidence package days earlier, and a detainment order had been approved based on probable cause for wire fraud, mail fraud, and extortion. The sheriff walked directly to the stage. Lorraine Whitfield, you have the right to remain silent. She didn't resist as the handcuffs clicked. For a moment, she looked at me with an expression stripped of performance. Just the hollow recognition of someone watching their entire world collapse in front of the people she had manipulated. The deputies led her through the silent crowd and out into the afternoon sun. The resolution to claim my lake was never called for a vote. 6 weeks later, the district attorney announced formal federal charges. The civil settlements moved faster. The 6 victims received compensation totaling almost $500,000 from liquidated assets. Denise bought her old home back. The HOA held emergency elections and installed new, legitimate leadership. I finished the fence around Pinewood Lake that autumn, 312 posts, 1,450 feet of perimeter. The wood was fresh and the water was clear. At the main entrance, I mounted a hand-carved sign. Pinewood Lake Nature Preserve, restored by one, protected by truth, enjoyed by all. Denise stood beside me as I drove in the final post. She spent 6 years taking things from people, and in the end, she lost everything because one person refused to stop asking questions. I thought about how close I came to accepting her offer. The difference between justice and silence was one stubborn person who wouldn't walk away. If you've ever dealt with HOA overreach, false violations, or someone abusing authority they never had, you are not alone. That channel exists to share stories like this one, to expose the tactics, and to show that fighting back is possible. Now, I want to hear from you. Lorraine offered me $120,000, more than double what I paid. Was the financial profit worth walking away and allowing the 6-year scam to continue, or was it a moral obligation to fight? Let me know your thoughts on what constitutes true justice in the comments below. If you love this story, please like and subscribe to HOA Stories.